Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I am your host, Sal, here with my co-host, Monty. What's going on, man?
What's going on, man? We're back. We're back on offense. I'm excited to get into some future pass catchers for Jackson Dart and, talk to you a little bit about this fucking mouthpieces of John Mara and the press. But, yeah, happy to be back. How you doing, man?
I've been doing good, man. Doing good. I mean, not as good as can be expected as being a Giants fan.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we're getting that old familiar place in the season now, where the wheels are beginning to, they're starting to fall off. It's frustrating, man. They just barely showed up in the last game. It looked ugly against the Niners. Just, everything we predicted going to that game, Kyle Shanahan's just going to run right past them on the outside. And they just played out that way. And he just beat the living snot out of them, even though the Niners had like the 30th ranked rushing offense coming into the game or something. Just, it sucked, man. Jackson Dart's out there still doing great stuff. And I appreciate that about him. But it sure looked to me like a lot of guys, especially on the defensive side, just kind of dialed it in.
Yeah, it's not a great watch. The defense is just embarrassing, and if Jackson Dart's battling his ass off out there, but he doesn't have help. I think there's talent on this team, but it's clear we need some new coaches in here, among other things.
Which goes to, kind of our Giants focused discussion of this episode. Trade deadline came and went. Giants didn't do anything. And I'm actually not upset at all that this
No,
2-7 team didn't make any major moves. I didn't want to see them trading future capital. I think everybody thought, hey, maybe they'll move some of the guys that they want to get off this team. The three specific guys that were being talked about were Evan Neal, Deontay Banks, and Jalen Hyatt. Nobody takes any one of them. And it just makes you wonder, right? I mean, that's 2 first-round picks and a guy who you traded a 3rd and a 4th-round pick to move up in the 3rd round to get in Hyatt at a premium position, and nobody wants any of them.
I have a question. I talked this a little bit about in Spaces today. Was there any trades you saw that you wish the Giants did?
I mean, honestly, no. I didn't want to add any talent, to be totally honest, at this point in the draft. If you're talking about the receivers that we added, I don't like giving up. I think it was a 4th and a 5th for Rashid Shaheed and a 4th and a 6th for Jacoby Myers, for rentals for both of them. Like I'm not okay with giving up a 4th round pick and then some for rentals at this point of the season. So no, I had my thoughts on the Jets trades. I mean, I think that the Jets absolutely fleeced the Colts on the Sauce Gardner trade. I don't care how good Sauce is to get back 2 firsts and A.D. Mitchell, who really has like a near 1st round value at a receiver when he was drafted last year, is just that's just a fleecing because, I mean, as great as Sauce is, I mean, I don't know if he's worth that. And I think that's one where the Jets made out. I might be on a little bit of an island where I didn't like the Quinnen Williams trade from the Jets perspective because I'm thinking to myself, like, what's the plan here? Like Quinnen's a top 5, top 6 DT in the NFL, 27 years old, at what has become a premium position also, and so what for a 1st and a 2nd, like what are you trying to do with that, I guess, is my question.
I just think they're going full tear down, and there's not anybody not on the table for them. I mean, right now, other than Garrett Wilson, we'll see. I think I could see that changing this offseason.
But then why not just trade Garrett Wilson?
I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they will eventually trade him.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see what happens. The one thing I'll say about the tear down, I understand people who love the tear down perspective. They just want to raise the ground, and I think that as a fan, that's fine. Like the more you tear it down, at least in theory, the longer it's going to take for you to put it back together and to be competitive. Yeah. So the problem with this approach is that most GMs and head coaches don't have the kind of runway that you need for this approach to work. How long do these guys think they have? Is my question, and that's what Woody Johnson, as the owner, who is not exactly known as a man who's built on patience. So, what happens if you tear it down and you're going to have the 1st or 2nd or 3rd overall pick this year, and then next year you add some players through the draft and they're all young, and you don't have any of the veterans now to help them, and you're drafting first or second again. And like, that's where they're headed, right? I mean, they're headed to being like a top 3 pick, top 4 pick the next couple of years. How much patience does Johnson have at that point, right? Then you go into the third year, like you have to start winning. If you're not winning, I mean, you're not going to get to see the fruits of your labor. Somebody else is going to benefit from what you're doing years down the line. It's an interesting approach. I'm not sure I agree with it, but at least they're sticking to something. No, I didn't want to see the Giants make any big moves.
I'll tell you, I had one.
They couldn't move, huh?
I had one that I wish we did. We were talking about this, and Logan Wilson. Wilson for a 7th round pick. He went for a 7th. I mean, we don't have a 7th. We would have had to send a 6th, and he has the rest of this year and then 2 more years of control where you'd only be paying him $6 million a year.
And he's 29 years old. You would get age 29, 30 out of him. You know,
even if that's your linebacker 3 for $6 million a year, I would do that.
Yeah, I would have done that too. But I'm fairly.
That's the only one that really was like
Joe Schoen probably never made that call.
No.
So I know. I mean, look, Shane lacks the creativity to find ways to improve the team for the future. I believe maybe he was told don't trade picks. I don't know what's going on over there. But the other part of the Giants related news is it's pretty clear that the message coming out through, the typical media guys like Paul Schwartz, who speak for the Maras essentially, is that Paul Schwartz and this really hilarious burner account. I forgot the name. Jason Smith or something like that.
Something JS.
That guy is amazing. And like, I gotta find whoever that burner is. I don't know who it is, or even if it's some random ass fan who's just pretending to be a burner of Joe. It's just a great follow because the commentary is phenomenal. But like basically the story coming out is prepare yourselves for Daboll being a goner and Shane being a lifer. And, just like digest that, Giants fans. I think the message coming out of, 1925 is, as I adjust my mic here, by the way, is that they're separating these two out a little bit. And we should probably prepare ourselves for the prospect that Joe Schoen's sticking around. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, look, this happens every year. I think Giants fans are smart enough, at least the ones who pay attention. I'm sure the people who listen to this show pay attention enough to understand what's going on here when Paul Schwartz puts things out like this. You pay attention when Paul Schwartz speaks. You don't listen to what he's saying because it's all a bunch of propaganda from the Giants, but you understand the message that's coming behind it. He did put a interesting enough. I remember we talked about on the show. It seemed like he put a message earlier out in the season, before we got that big win versus the Chargers, that it almost seemed like Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll weren't safe. But now since Jackson Dart has been doing well and things like that, it seems like the message they're putting out is that Joe Schoen is safe and Brian Daboll isn't. And I've heard that. Other people have heard that, through the grapevine. And it, Paul Schwartz essentially confirmed it. So he's going to go out there. He's going to try to push this message to fans and try to make fans, aware that this might happen and really try to be okay with it. They're going to try to sell it to fans. And I don't know. All I say to you guys is don't accept it. Continue to push back. Continue to call Paul Schwartz out on his bullshit. Make it known that fans will not be happy if this happens. And between that and, what is going to show up over and over again, that this is a football team that lacks depth, that their players that Joe Schoen drafted in key positions aren't showing up, and continue to embarrass him. I mean, hopefully there's a lot of season left and they'll do the right thing and fire both of them.
There's a lot to unpack with the whole Joe Schoen thing. I mean, let's start with Brian Daboll real quick. I think he's a goner. I don't see it at this point. You're 2-7. You've lost Malik Neighbors. You've lost Cam Scadaboo. You're not finding offense anywhere. Like, I don't know nobody's finding miracle offense for you at this point. Nobody's coming. There's nobody coming to help you. The trade deadline's gone. At this point, you're relegated to maybe picking up, practice squad guys and trying out guys weekly and seeing who can help. But the team you've got Ray McLeod. Maybe that's your hope, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe
like
he improves.
you're not finding offense anywhere at this point, not beyond what you're doing. So that's not going to help. And I think the bigger issue is the defense.
Mm-hmm.
We were discussing this earlier today. My bullish theory of the Giants being a winning team this year was based on two parts of what I thought were going to be the factors leading to wins. One was that the Giants offense was going to be better than expected with competent quarterback play, whether it was with Russell Wilson or Jackson Dart, and that ultimately this team would average about 22 to 23 points per game with a better offense through a better quarterback, rotation. And that their defense was going to be, I was never in that top 5, top 10 bullshit discussion, but I was, if you recall, somebody who said, I think this should be a top half of the league defense, a little bit better than average. And I said, well, if it averages around 23 points a game or something like that, or 22 something, I think this defense could be in the 21, 22 point per game territory, and we'll be averaging 22, 23 plus points per game on offense. And ultimately, I think that leads to a little bit better, somewhere in the 500 range, maybe a little bit better. And that's where I got my winning formula from. And what people laughed about that when I said it initially was like, where do you think this offense is coming from? They didn't believe that. Nobody really disputed the idea that the defense would be able to stay about average or a little better than average, right? I think most people expected that. Well, the Giants under Jackson Dart are averaging almost 25 points per game.
Yep. Jackson Dart is third among quarterbacks in touchdowns since he took over.
So we're putting up plenty of points, especially with Dart. The defense, on the other hand, is giving up over 27 points per game. They're almost at 28 points per game. That's the part that is frustrating, right? Because that's where all the investments went. They went to the defensive side of the ball, draft picks, money, everything. And to be this bad, right? Like essentially the worst in the league, to be this awful is really unacceptable. And that's the story of the season. You can spin it any way you want, right? The story of why we're 2-7 is the story of a defense that should have been at least average, producing at the bottom of the league and giving up a shit ton of points. Yep. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah. And look, like Daboll is not, I don't think he's the right guy for the job. He's gone. He deserves to be gone. But, these moments that are coming up that's proving he's not the guy and, really leading to him fired probably aren't even in a lot of these situations if you just have a defense that's playing up even close to what, its talent is indicating it should be. The offense, since Dart took over, is doing its job. The offense is putting up points, but the defense, which is where all our resources are, is not.
It's a problem, man. Like I mean, we were very much on and I'll admit I was very much before the season on the let's see what Shane Bowen does now that he has the talent that he needs to run this defense. I'm not going to throw him away fully. I just want to see what he does. It became very obvious to me very fast that he was going to be terrible again. After the Dallas game, I was very much
worse than he was last year.
Right. After Dallas, I was like, I'm ready to move on. There's too much talent here. I don't want to waste the whole season. And he stuck around through that. He stuck around through the Denver disaster. He stuck around through the Philly game. Like he's just stuck around through disaster after disaster, poorly coached game after poorly coached game. He does not give his players any advantageous situations to thrive in. He has no versatility. There's just nothing to like. It's a very vanilla, boring, weak, soft kind of defense. And I think more importantly, his players do not look ready to play football on Sunday. No. Now, is that a Shane Bowen problem or is that a Brian Daboll problem? Is it a both? I don't know. But all I know is the defensive players don't look like they're even interested in playing on that side of the football, except for a handful of guys. And that's the story of this season, is a really underwhelming defensive performance as a unit. And, he's still here, right? Like they're not firing him. It's astonishing, like how they're not firing him or doing anything about this. I'm kind of at a loss for words about it.
Yeah, Brian Daboll has nobody to blame but himself with this defensive coordinator decision he's made to not replace Shane Bowen this offseason and not to even attempt to replace him in season. I know that can't do as much at this point, but you got to try something. And he just refuses to move on. And, at the end of the day, when Brian Daboll's fired, whether that's in season or at the end of the season, we'll see. I've been advocate of waiting just to the end of the year, but the way that with Paul Short's putting out articles like this, who fucking knows when he's gonna be fired, and he has no one else to blame but himself at this point.
Yeah, it's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be a bloodbath, and it sounds like Joe Schoen's gonna survive it. And they're putting out the feelers. They want to keep him, and there's a whole lot of reasons why that may be the case. I went to it today with this. For those who listened, I know some of you were there. I did a lot of connecting the dots and following the money to try to come up with my rationale for why I think Joe Schoen operates the way he does and why the Giants brass might like him. It actually warrants, in my opinion, its own discussion, its own pod to some extent, but I'll summarize it real briefly. The Giants, until Julia Koch purchased 10% of the team, have been part owned 50% by the Maras and the Tisch family, respectively. For those who don't know, the Maras don't do anything but the Giants. The Tisch family, on the other hand, owns the Lowe's Corporation, which is a media and hospitality organization, owns a lot of hotels. They have traditionally been the financial backers of the team, above and beyond revenue sharing. And, their leadership changed in the last year. Ben Tisch, who's the I guess he's the nephew of Steve Tisch. He's now the CEO of Tisch Corporation. You have to dig into the finances of the Tisch Corporation in the last few years, but ultimately what's going on is I think a lot of the cash flow that they might have previously provided to the Giants is being reinvested back into the Tisch Corporation and stock buybacks. So I think the net result from what I can see, and this is my guess, my educated guess, looking at their income statements, their quarterly reportings, their stock price over the last 5-6 years. My suspicion is that the Tisch Corporation is no longer funneling a lot of money back into the Giants, which makes the Giants a little bit more cash poor because the Maras absolutely don't have excess cash beyond what they get from revenue sharing. And what that means is you might have to adopt a more austere, conservative, year-over-year salary cap approach to things, where the money you spend is really your salary cap allocation, which is that's a function of revenue sharing, right? I mean, the salary cap is determined on a formula where I think it's 51% of the total profit of the NFL year over year goes back to the players, and it gets divided over 32 teams. And that division, like that number, whatever that total number is that goes back to the players, divided by 32, that's your salary cap every year. And so that money just goes to the team, and the NFL says, here, we're a big, gigantic oligarch socialist system. Here's your money, everybody. That money has to go to your players, and it's capped. And if all you do is no cap manipulation, no future borrowing, if you just say, this is my budget for this year, it's the salary cap number, I have the cash coming from revenue sharing, I don't have to spend any of my own money, right? The team doesn't have to put any excess cash in. The owners don't. You just take the NFL revenue sharing and you'll give it to the players. Then you're basically dealing with a year-over-year budget. It appears to me the last couple of years, I believe the Giants are actually doing that. And I think Joe Schoen, and we talked about this, right? Like that's how he operates, kind of a shoestring budget. He has his budget, he spends his money, he doesn't borrow much from the future. We've noticed that, right? He doesn't create void years. Right. Doesn't create void years. He just, here's my budget, I spend it. And is it because Joe Schoen is just an idiot, right? And he doesn't understand the cap rules? I mean, that might be it. Or is part of it also that the Giants are in a cash flow poor situation where what they're saying to him is, here's your budget. You got to use it. And you can't carry it over. You got to use it and figure out how to make use of this. We don't want you dipping into next year. Again, I think we'll have to do a whole episode on this, and I'll have to talk to you off pod about how we structure this. But when you follow the money, it starts to make sense that maybe this is what they're operating as. And, the opposite of this, by the way, is what Philadelphia is doing, what Jeffrey Luria and some of the others are doing, which is the cash over cap structure, where they're saying the salary cap is $250 million and we get $250 million from the NFL and revenue sharing. But I'm going to take that 250 plus me, Jeffrey Luria, I'm going to add money to that. I'm going to put cash over the cap to pay players in terms of signing bonuses and other things to get more talent here. And what that allows my GM to then do is say, well, I have more cash than salary cap space, so I'm going to push that salary cap money way down in the future. I'm going to borrow from the future. I'm going to create void years. But in real dollars, what you're doing is you're putting a bigger investment per year into your team than a team like the Giants are doing. And you ask yourself, why are the rosters so much better and so much deeper on some of these other teams? Well, they're putting more actual real dollars into it year over year than the Giants are.
And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you try to continue to push that out. Because, these teams, the money catches up with them and you can continue to do it. You just got to keep pushing it. But that requires almost all the guys you're signing being pure signing bonuses. And
It also
put into void
requires
years.
like the endless ATM of your owner, continuously
So,
pushing out
that's what I'm
cash,
saying.
which some owners are fine with it because they have a lot of money, right? And they view this as an investment and they think the return on investment is higher than what they put in. But what if you're a cash-strapped ownership group, right? And you don't have that liquid cash? I mean, so again, I have no confirmation of this. It's a theory of mine based on what I'm finding and how they're operating. That maybe the Giants are just operating like literally year to year budget. Yeah, they go above it a little bit. I'm not saying they don't go above it at all, but not by much. They largely stick to the salary cap allocation dollars. So anyway, we'll have to go into it a little bit more. We'll see what happens. I think losses are going to start mounting, unfortunately, at this point, unless Jackson Dart can stop it. But I don't know who's helping him. And we're going to see. We're going to see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see if they can sell bringing back Joe Schoen if we land with 3 or 4 wins or something like that. That's going to be a tough sell.
I'll tell you the other factor to this, I think, is, I know Justin Pennick talked about it on Talking Giants this week in his episode. And, it's a conversation we're all going to need to have at some point. And is it, is the main driver between not firing Joe Schoen just the idea that John Mara is not healthy? And John Mara is going to have to, in the past, has had a very, very large role in hiring these general managers. It's been him and Steve Tisch who's made this decision. And he is not well enough to be involved in that decision at this point. And they don't necessarily know who should and who will be involved. And they might be looking to avoid doing that with so much in flux right now. I think there's probably a lot of panic behind the scenes with the Maras, where whether, prayers up to John and hopefully he's okay. But whether he's just temporarily unavailable or, it's getting towards the end with him, they have to handle this. Somebody has to step up and take charge of the team. And I think that there's probably a lot going on trying to figure that out right now.
Yeah, I get the impression that, and it would make sense, that who the GM is probably the least of the concerns of the Mara family right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably just kind of figuring out what's going on with John's health and day-to-day operations. And sometimes when that's the case, the less disruption you have, the better, when you go through crises like that.
And that might just be, we have Joe Schoen, we like him, we trust him. We have Tim McDonald, let the front office, we have Brandon Brown, let the front office pick the next head coach because, so we did last time. John Mara is involved, but it was Joe Schoen's decision. And that's one person who, one way they can kind of hand off and not, it's I don't like that this is the route, but it's just being realistic. That might be the case.
Yeah. Last little thing I wanted to throw out there before we get into the episode with the position group is, traditionally the Giants have always, signed guys to extensions and not let them. Montiker 52 is responding to a message in the chat, but I can see that. Yeah. They traditionally have always extended people beyond their last year, so they don't work on a final year of a contract. But is there a world, given the unique circumstances of Mara's health, is there a world where they just hire the coach they want and not extend Joe Schoen, and just say, what, you're going to be the GM next year. You haven't earned an extension, but we're not going to fire you right now. We are going to pick a head coach. You got to prove that you can work with them and build something, and we'll talk about your extension later. I mean, normally I would say no way the Giants would never do that. But when we're talking about, not wanting disruption, change, or necessarily, to make too many big decisions for the future, maybe that's a decision you could just make by saying, we're just going to punt on this decision by not doing anything. He's under contract for next year. just stay under contract for next year. We're still going to hire a new head coach. That's all.
Yeah. I mean like, again, I like you said, I wouldn't necessarily say that would be the case. It's pretty unheard of, but we are in a pretty unprecedented situation for the Giants.
It's going to be fascinating. Unfortunately, we're here where we're talking about shit like this and not, the football team. But we all have Jackson Dart, right? And to hell with all this other stuff. At the end of the day, we got Jackson Dart, who is on pace for what? 4,200 yards and 44 touchdowns or some crap like that.
It was like
on a 17
4,040 and 42 and a half touchdowns, I think is what
insane production like numbers. What he's doing is ridiculous, and so just enjoy that the rest of the way. Every time you get down, just enjoy what Jackson Dart's doing. Now, along those lines, before we get into this, make sure to please hit the like button. Subscribe if you can. We're getting closer to 1,000 subscriptions. That does help us on the algorithm with YouTube. So hit like and subscribe. Please retweet. You can, and always, reach out to us. I'll do this stuff right now. You can reach out to us on Twitter at He's a Giant Pod, me at Queens_guy, Monty at MONTECRI5TO, phonetically pronounced Montecrifive2. But Jackson Dart's whooping ass and he's got no targets, Monty. So what is the most efficient way? What is the best value way to add receiver production in the NFL?
Well, the cheapest way is tight ends because you don't have to pay them like you pay a wide receiver.
Tight ends earn 50 cents on the dollar for their production relative to what wide receivers do for the same thing. I mean, we've done this math on it, right? Like if you look at tight ends who produce at a certain level and you look at their counterparts in the wide receiver room, like literally the same production that you get from a tight end, you will get for about 50 cents on the dollar compared to just the average wide receivers who are out there. It's unbelievably cheap right now. It's a money ball value position for getting production. And tight ends, when they're good, are quarterbacks' best friends. They generally should be decent route runners, good targets who catch the football when it's thrown to them, get yak, things we value, right? Run a good route, present yourself as a big target, catch the football when it's thrown to you and get some yards after contact, make some tackles get missed. And we need some of that because the guys we have, I mean, I like Daniel Bellinger. He catches everything, but he doesn't do much in terms of yak. I mean, that's just not a big strength of his, and we like that in a tight end, but I think he's a decent tight end too. Theo Johnson, I don't want to get too down on him because he was a 4th round pick.
Yeah.
And I think for a 4th round pick, he's fine. Right.
But they're treating him like he's a 1st round pick since we brought him in.
They treat Theo Johnson like he's basically Eric Ebron or some other, or Evan Engram, or you name the 1st round quarterback, or Hawkinson. What are these guys, right?
They're like, they're too talented to give up on this kid.
Right. This guy has to get every rep. He's got to get back out there. And he's got butterfingers and he catches the ball like, he catches the ball like he's opening a woman's bra for the first time.
He doesn't turn his head. Like,
doesn't know where his hands go, like it's ridiculous. It looks like Frankenstein out there half the time. And every now and then he'll make this crazy play like he did on the touchdown where he'll catch like a quick out and he'll make these insane moves and show his strength and get yards after contact and drive the ball into the end zone. Or like when he caught the batted ball from Bondale Robinson in Denver, like that was an athletic play where he grabbed the ball out of thin air and then just like out of midair and just ran into the end zone. But then he can't catch like a perfectly thrown football right at him.
Yeah, right to his chest.
Anyway, we do have Fedoni. We got a free Dino Dong, and I want to see what he can do the rest of the year. But the tight end class coming out, Monty, this is an interesting group. I mean, I was actually again, the theme of this draft series, right? Pleasantly surprised by the talent.
Yeah, it's not necessarily top heavy. You're not necessarily full of blue chippers, but there's some good players in the draft. We're finding that over and over again.
Yep. So once again, our format, we have chosen 5 players. We're giving up the whole. This is our tight end 1, 2, 3. We're not doing any of that shit. We went up and down the draft, pick some guys who we think will be near the top of the draft, pick some guys from the middle of the draft, some guys who are probably day 2. We went through a bunch of different players and we picked 5 guys that we thought were worth profiling. And a lot of them are going to be taken in different spots, but they're names worth knowing because any one of them could be a target of the Giants. So, per usual, I think we're going to have a slightly different take on a lot of these players than consensus. So who's doing number one for us?
I can go ahead and do one. All right.
Who the hell is one? Actually, no. You know what? You love number two.
Okay. So you want to do one? Yeah, I do love two.
All right. So let me pull up this guy's stuff while I talk to you guys. And this guy, this is a target that we should pay attention to. Our tight end one, according to our grading system, in this out of these five is Michael Trigg from Baylor. Not the guy you thought that would be in a green jersey. This is a completely different green jersey guy. We're profiling him specifically for our friend Rad, who got to watch him play at USC. Who is Michael Trigg? Michael Trigg is a 6'4", 240-pound tight end. He's a redshirt senior who started his collegiate career at USC in 2021, transferred with Jackson Dart from USC to Ole Miss. 2022, 2023, he's at Ole Miss. He played with him there. And then after that, he transferred to Baylor, and he's been there for 2 years, 2024, 2025. He is a productive wide receiver, Monty. So far this year, he is through the roof in production. He has 40 receptions on 70 targets, 607 yards. I know that percentage doesn't sound great, but we'll get to that. But 607 yards, 15 yards per reception, 6 touchdowns. Here's where he excels in terms of statistics. His yak, which is one of the things we value a lot, is outstanding. 209 yards, and the tape shows it of yak. He gets a little over 5 yards of yak per reception, which is a big number. Yards per route run, 2.30. That is really high for a tight end. Very, very high for a tight end. And then the number I think that's the most impressive, I had it here. Did I lose it? Here it is. Missed tackles forced. I think this is outstanding. 16 missed tackles forced already this year. So a really productive, missed tackles yak machine. So let me tell you about Michael Trigg. He's a big, strong player in the run game as a blocker, drives guys off the line of scrimmage. He is a tough runner. He does not come down. You get him the football in space, he is difficult to bring down. He's got good, clean hands. He catches most things that come his way that are thrown properly. I should mention that because he doesn't always get the ball thrown properly to him. Has good feet. He's a good athlete. He's smooth with the football. Good start and stop ability. He's almost like a big slot, very athletic player, fluid, not choppy like a lot of the bigger tight ends are. Very good ball skills. He has this knack for finding the soft spots in zone, understands coverage, gets good leverage, presents a big target and an easy target for his quarterback, gets a lot of separation for a tight end. I was shocked by how much separation he was getting.
Yeah.
And he also has what you're looking for, like that big man box out mentality when he's in a contested catch situation. He's able to go up and get the football, sets up, his routes with tempo. He does a lot of advanced wide receiver things for a tight end. And he's really, really a high level athlete. I mean, at the tight end position, this is like your prototypical big wide receiver type, athlete at tight end. If there are cons, I went into it a little bit statistically. He does have a little bit of a drop issue. And I know Giant fans are going to be like, no, don't give me that. But I found that I want to, you have to watch the tape to see the drops. But man, he had some knuckleballs and heaters thrown at him, behind him and stuff. And he gets dinged for drops. But some of that shit, man, that's on the quarterback. But nevertheless, he's got to catch for that. He's got to stop the drop and improve on that. I do think that some of those are because he's a little bit more passive going and getting the football, especially when he's running in the middle of the field. He can be inconsistent with his blocking, especially in pass blocking. He has to work on getting just better overall as a blocker, even in the run game, although he has a lot of pop there. He's a bit of an older prospect. Those are the kind of cons. But overall, this is a guy, Monty, and I don't know where he's going to go in the draft, but he's a big, strong kid. He's a very fluid athlete. And he is a big, big plus in the passing game. This is a guy who basically serves as an extra wide receiver with a tight end's body and frame and strength, gets a ton of yak. Really, really this is one of those cheat code tight ends we talk about, right? He can give you receiver production out of the tight end position and a lot of value. He's a chain mover. You get a guy like this, he's your quarterback's best friend. I think I would love to see. Put it this way: if this guy was on our team right now, I have zero doubt that Dart would be using him constantly because he'd be getting himself open all the time, and he's a yak machine, yardage machine. I really like what I saw in this kid. What do you like about Michael Triggs?
I liked him, man. I really saw a good all around tight end, in my opinion. No, I'll get into the negative first here, just to get out of the way. Like I don't think he is a refined blocker today. I do think he has a lot of issues with his techniques. I think he has some really low lows as a blocker, where you can see him, you said, especially as a pass protector, but in time as a run blocker, that he really can whiff on a play and not really show that he's a good blocker. But there's other times where I'm seeing this guy use his strength, use in like pancake guys. He is absolutely killing, getting movement off the line. Like he's flashed to me the ability to be a high end blocker at the next level, especially if he adds some weight onto his frame. So that is an issue, but I do think is impressive. You mentioned the drop issue. He's 5 already this year, but I think he's only had like 1 max in years past. So again, like I don't think it's something that I'm overly worried about. But man, he is he's a smooth mover, man. When he tempos his routes well, and he'll get to the top of his break, and he'll just absolutely fire out and show his burst, and he said creates a ton of separation. You see him do that a lot. You say boxes out. He has really oily hips, in my opinion. Like he's just a really he's a smooth mover. Like he just like effortlessly gets in and out of his breaks and through his routes. Like not all guys, especially this size, you see that with most guys. I think we're going to talk about today. I had a lot of concerns with that. I don't think that they can move like that, but he can, and he has, to me, he has a stockier build, despite not like showing up necessarily in the height and weight. Really smart guy, finds soft zones. Just overall, I think the ability to be like a high end all around tight end, if he continues developing, like you said, man, I think the biggest thing is the after the catch ability. People just bounce off him. Like he is impossible to take down for some guys. And, I think that's one of the most important things for a tight end is what they can bring after the catch. And he is really special there.
He is, there are 2 things like I think that are worth. So people are asking, Rad is asking how old is he? He's 23. He turned 23 in June. He's a little older, but he's not like crazy old. But yes, he's a little bit of an older prospect. What I love about his blocking, you mentioned it, and I don't know if you noticed it on the tape. He has this technique especially with run blocking, when he comes in motion, and Baylor does this a lot. They set him up in motion, and he slows down right before the snap, and he just like almost stops and then fires into the A or B gap and just seals guys off with perfect timing, just as the running back is running back. It's like a really well-timed, well-designed scheme that they run with their running backs, where his timing is so good with the running back that he just seals off the blockers. He seals off the block like right as the guy's going right past him.
Agreed.
And he's very
really
good at this.
The body positioning and sealing, I agree.
It's outstanding, and it's in the middle of the line, right? It's not. He's going up against some big boys who are playing, we're playing DTs and stuff, and he's doing it to them. So very impressive. I mean, I think when he gets one-on-one with linebackers, he's dominating them on a lot of blocks, especially those move blocks. I think where he can improve, and I think this is all about what you're talking about in terms of technique, is as a pass blocker. Like he might not be ready to take on edge rushers at the NFL level. I can see him getting pushed around a little bit there, but he's such a big kid, and I think he's coachable in that way. I think he's fine, but again, his strength is his receiving chops.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into his scoring system. So the categories are speed and quickness. We both gave him a 4. Strength, we both gave him a 4. Route running, we both gave him a 4. Hands, you gave him a 3. I gave him a 2. I did this based on the drops.
That's fair. Mm-hmm.
I was a little harsh with him there. But like I said, a lot of the drops are just his quarterback trying to murder him. Blocking, it's interesting. You gave him a 2. I gave him a 4 here. This is our biggest discrepancy. And I'm giving him a lot of credit for how I think he's going to get used in the NFL. And I'll explain that. I know what you're talking about with the pass blocking, but the way he sets up and seals blocks in the run game and especially in his use as either a motion slot or an H-back, I think is exactly how he's going to get used in the NFL to start. And I think he's actually going to be a plus blocker.
Yeah, I do think he's a good move blocker. I saw too many lows with him, man. I think that he has some really good flashes of where I think he can develop into being what you're saying is a 4, like an above like a high end blocker in the NFL. I see him today as a guy who is too inconsistent for that.
Okay. It's our only real big disagreement here. Yak, we both gave him a 4. Versatility, I think we both gave him a 4. IQ, we both gave him a 3. And frame, we both gave him a 3. He's a little bit on the lean side because he's a big kid. But overall, I mean, he graded out as a 3.5 for us. I mean, that's a high score. It's the highest score we gave. So
yeah,
Mike
our
Trigg
tight ends didn't get the highest of grades here, but I do like them.
Yeah. Now, he's probably going to be, he's probably going to be like not a round 1 guy, probably a day 2 guy, but we're going to grade it as we see it. And I see a lot of value. And like, I would have no problem using a day 2 pick on a guy like this, especially if you're thinking about using him as a big slot receiver.
And he's got history with Jackson Dart at 2 schools.
All right. You want to do number 2? Because this is your favorite player, I believe.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily grade out that way for me, but I loved him. Absolutely loved him. So let's get in. It's a guy we talked about last year. We talked about him during our freak list episode. Eli Stowers, 6'4", 235 pounds, 4-star recruit, redshirt senior from Vanderbilt. He started out at Texas A&M as a quarterback, actually. He was a 4-star quarterback recruit. Funny enough, he was in the same recruiting class as Jackson Dart. He was actually the one spot ahead of Jackson Dart by 247 in the quarterback rankings. It went Stowers, Dart, Milrow. Funny enough. So, but he's made the Feldman freak.
Two of them are going to be tight ends in the NFL, and one of them is Jackson Dart.
Yeah. But this guy is a guy who's made the Feldman freak list twice now. He had a 41.5-inch vertical, which is 98th percentile for tight ends. 10.8 broad jump. I actually think that's out of date. I think he got up to 10.11 now. I was reading, but that was what it was last year. Former 2019 Texas 6A high school high jump state champion. And let's get into some of my thoughts about him here. I thought this was a guy who had natural, reliable hands. He's a secure catcher. Some issues this year with drops. We'll get into that, but I really did like his hands from his entire career at Vanderbilt. Smooth and fluid athlete. I thought he was extremely fluid mover on routes. Good route tempo, sets up defenders and explodes out of the breaks. Something we talked about with Triggs, but I think Stowers does it even better. This is one of my favorite things about him. Excellent chemistry with QBs. He understands timing and adjusts as his quarterback extends plays. Diego Pavia, he's not an NFL quarterback, but in college, he's a guy who often, extend plays and will try to make something happen for Vanderbilt, much like we see with our quarterback, Jackson Dart. And I watch it and I just envision the target he can be for Jackson Dart. Whenever Diego Pavia breaks that pocket, he finds a soft spot, takes off downfield. He's always looking how he can take advantage of a defense trying to prepare for Diego Pavia getting outside the pocket. I think that may be his best ability, honestly. Shows vision and awareness as a runner, which is really good vision, and can drag defenders after contact. He's maybe on the lighter side, but he legitimately, I've seen him drag like 4 or 5 guys downfield, just effective after the catch. Excellent yak ability. And he just looks explosive in open field. Good feel for finding spots in soft zone, savvy getting open, just versatile line. I mean, it can potentially operate as a big slot or flex tight end. Let's get into some of my cons about him. Struggles with strength as a blocker, inconsistent contact balance at times, can struggle even versus DBs in runner or pass pro. Like I saw some deep when he's lined out wide at wide receiver. I saw some DBs give him fits in the run game. More of a slot flex tight end than a traditional inline tight end, limited inline blocking upside. Stop and start can look slow at times, lacks power against bigger defenders, not dominant as a downfield blocker, pad level leverage can be inconsistent. And as I mentioned, some drop issues. But man, I will tell you, quite literally one of the best athletes I feel like I've ever watched at the tight end position. He is scary athletic.
Yeah, I agree. He's fun to watch, man. He's quick. We were talking about this before the show. Vanderbilt has this play, and it's amazing. Like they set it up, and it's the same play every time. They don't even try to disguise it. It's this play where Pavia, drops back, and Stowers either comes out of motion or comes out of the backfield, and it looks like he just kind of disappears and hides behind the line, like he's blocking, and then Pavia just kind of misdirections and just pitches it to him, and right over, like, essentially right through the A gap. He just takes the ball and just weaves his way through. Those are usually designed plays to get like 5-10 yards, catch the defense looking. And in the same game, I saw him rip off like 50 yards on one play and like 60 yards on another play. Like once he takes off, man, the guy is running like a running back, like flying down the field, and he's weaving through dudes, and just a very impressive display of athleticism and speed and vision. Like he plays the position like that's all he's been playing for years. Yet, like you said, he's basically a convert from the quarterback position. So I think the sky's the limit on this guy in terms of what he could do athletically at the NFL and develop into. But you said it. I think the big issue with him is going to be that there is some limitation in versatility here because he's just not, he doesn't have the size and the raw strength to really trust in line. I think you put him in line, he's going to get destroyed. And he's more of he really is more of an H-back, more of either an H-back or a big slot receiver. And I think he offers a lot there, but I don't think he's the guy that, like, he's not going to sit on the line of scrimmage like George Kittle and blow guys off the spot and then go run a route. That's just not his game.
You want to know who he reminded me of when I watched him?
Let me think about this. A really athletic tight end who doesn't block well in line. You always say Mark Gesicki, but he's better than him. Well, who do you think?
Mike Gesicki's my comp for everybody who can't do anything after the catch. No,
right, yeah.
He reminds me so much of Darren Waller.
Oh, interesting.
Like when I'm talking about like great athletes at the tight end position, like there's not many that I see, honestly, that is athletic as Eli Stowers. And that just brings my mind when I watch him to, imagine all the things we could have done with Darren Waller if he kind of could have stayed healthy. Watching his tape from the Raiders and just imagining, that's what I was kind of seeing when I was watching Eli Stowers.
Yeah. And like Darren Waller, I think if Eli Stowers is asked to block, play fullback or block in line, he might decide to retire. So go to the Dolphins later. But he's a fun watch, man. He grades out well. And look, we're being realistic here. We don't think these are guys who are going to go at the top of the draft or anything, but we like them, and they're the kind of guys who I wouldn't mind the Giants targeting. So, let's get into the grades. I really like the kid. I think he's really fun. I enjoyed it, but in a weird way, he graded out less well than he looked on tape.
Real quick. Also, I want to mention 2.65 yards per route run is an insane number for a tight end.
Yeah, it's like near elite wide receiver number.
Yeah.
So speed and quickness, you gave him a 5. I gave him a 4. Strength, you gave him a 2. I gave him a 3. I gave him the benefit of the doubt here, but I probably could have given him a 2 here.
It was route running stuff that got him for him.
I know. Route running, we both gave him a 4. Hands, we gave him a 3. I could have given him a 4 here. He really doesn't drop much.
He had it this year though, but he hasn't had it in past. So I dropped him to 3.
Blocking, you gave him a 2. I gave him a 3. I give him a little bit of credit for run blocking. Yak 4s, versatility. I probably went too high here. You gave him a 2. I think that's more appropriate. I gave him a 3. Football IQ, I agree with both. Gave him a 4. And then frame, you gave him a 2. I gave him a 2. Overall, he graded out as a 3.22. So I was a little bit higher on him than you were on grading, but you obviously liked him more. But yeah, I mean, I think he grades out as a guy who's probably a slightly above average NFL tight end, but his lack of versatility is going to be the issue, right? I think that's going to be what affects his draft stock. Hard for me to see him going too high because of that.
Yeah, man. I mean, at the end of the day, we've talked about it when we graded other guys. Like, the total grade matters for sure. But when I can sit there and I can point to elite traits, that's how you're going to make me fall in love with the prospect. Like, I gave him a 5 for speed and quickness, and I don't regret that at all. I think he is a special athlete. Honestly, I think this is my thought. I really think that Eli Stowers, when he goes to the combine and blows it up, I think we might be talking about him as a first round pick. I could see like an Evan Ingram type rise for him. I think he's going to have a day at the combine if he matches what I see on tape. But the route running, like a 4, the yak a 4. Honestly, you could argue 5. He just doesn't quite have the tackle breaking abilities. He does it more with athleticism, but yeah, football IQ is just the way he reads his quarterback. Just so many high end traits.
Yep. All right, let's go to number 3 here. So number 3 in our list, we finally get to the guy that everybody else is talking about being at the top of the list. The one first round player, and our number 3 player on our list is Kenyon Sadiq, tight end from Oregon, 6'3", 245 pounds, 4-star recruit. He is a junior. He was a Feldman freak, 10% body fat, 41.5-inch vertical, 365-pound power cleans, and 435 on the bench. He is a good, not great, willing blocker, I would say. Lots of experience in the run game. He is versatile. He can line up in line and take on defensive ends and edges. He can line up in the slot. He can line up outside as a wide receiver. He can as an outside receiver. He can line up as an H-back. His calling card is his athleticism. He's a phenomenal athlete, explosive athlete, smooth movements. He's very good when the ball comes his way in terms of ball skills, high points it, good technique, catches just about everything coming his way. He's a solid blocker, can seal block, and move block, and handle pass rush. He has good awareness in zone, finds a nice soft spot for his quarterback, presents a good target. And like I said, overall, he's a good blocker. So there's no real weakness to his game. He's a very good all-around player. Where I think you and I were less high on Sadiq is that we don't see, at least on tape, I'm not seeing the elite upside stuff that you need to see to call a guy hands down first round tight end. So his weaknesses, despite the fact that he's a good blocker, he sometimes will struggle with power rushes. He struggles maintaining contact balance because of that with power. His pad level is inconsistent. He can be a little bit, I don't know what the word is that I'm thinking of, but asymmetric. His footwork, his hands are not in sync all the time. He, it doesn't sustain blocks because of it. He's a bit of a lunger. When he's running routes, he's kind of telegraphing routes. I don't know if you noticed that, right? Like Stowers was a really good route runner, very sudden, quick at the stem. I felt like Sadiq was more like, this is the route I'm running. I'm running it. You know what it's coming, and I'm going to just try to beat you.
He rounded routes a lot from what I saw. A lot.
And I didn't see him mix up speed, tempo, nothing. He was very kind of like he almost like slow running the routes, right? Like just very steady. He is a bit inconsistent there. He's a little sloppy as a route runner. He's a little stiff when he's running routes. He's not as great of an athlete as he is. He doesn't use like a fluid athleticism in his game. And I don't think there's anything special about his start and stop, his cutback abilities. He's got some drops this year. But bottom line is, this is an elite athlete, which is something the NFL covets at the tight end position. He can align himself all over the field, from outside wide receiver down to inline, H-back, back, whatever. You name it, he can do it. And he's a good, not great blocker. As a run blocker, he's an acceptable pass blocker. Does kind of everything you need to be a starting tight end. I am not minimizing what he is, but My concern with him, Monty, is I think he's a good starting tight end, but I'm not sure what the upside of this guy is, because if I'm taking somebody in the first round, I want him to become an all-pro as a receiver.
Yeah, I think, like he's a very athletic guy, but his athleticism kind of reminds me in the sense of when we looked at Theo Johnson, he came out, he had these crazy testing numbers and he looked athletic on tape. You could see his athleticism. It did pop, but at times it just didn't look functional. And I see that a little bit with Sadiq where, I see him, go to stop on a route and he's 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to try to slow down and then change direction. That if you're taking that many steps to stop and change directions, that's an issue. And it's when we mentioned he rounds out the routes, it just doesn't feel like he has the suddenness to be an elite route runner. I don't see that from him. I do think he's a good deep threat. I think he's a guy who has really good straight line speed, who's pretty smooth, when he's not trying to make a sudden break. I think when he's just, trying to kind of drift in certain ways, he's pretty smooth hips trying to get by the DV. And I think he's really athletic in the sense he can go up and he gets a lot of height when he jumps and he can go and pinpoint a ball. I think he has good timing on his jumps. I think that is something. I think he could be a really good red zone threat in the NFL. I think he could bring that. But yeah, man, I had a lot of issues with him as a blocker. Let's see what I'll say about Sadiq. I had a really hard time deciding what I was going to give him with my blocking grade, because he does a lot for Oregon as a blocker. A lot. They ask him to block so much in that offense, which I don't understand why. I think he's a much better suited to if they used him as a weapon, because at college he's a very good weapon at the college game, and he's not that great of a blocker. He's not a bad blocker by any means. They have him in line, they have him blocking a lot, and I think he does his job most of the time. But yeah, his feet lag behind his hands. He ends up lunging. He can have some really bad reps. Other times he looks really consistent and really good, but he just doesn't always have the best strength in it and the best technique in it. But he has a lot more experience doing it than a lot of guys in this draft. So I don't know, man. I think he's a good tight end. I think he's the guy that teams will and should bet on athletically, but I don't see a first round tight end.
No. He does a lot of things good. He doesn't do anything great. And that's kind of the issue I have with naming him a first round tight end. But sounds like he's going to go in the first. We'll see. Maybe. It is a bet on trades pick. If he puts it all together, he could be outstanding. But just based on what I'm seeing right now in college, I just think he's good, not great. That's kind of.
I tried to see. I tried while I was watching all the games we had available, and the three of them, I just didn't see it.
Let's go to the scores. Speed and quickness, we both gave him a 4. That's his strength.
It's more speed than quickness, to be honest.
Right. Strength, you gave him a 2. I gave him a 3. I saw enough blocking where I was okay with giving him a 3, but I get where you're coming from.
I could have gave him a 3.
Route running, we gave him a 3. Average. He uses his explosiveness and his athleticism to get into the routes, but like you mentioned, he rounds out and telegraphs the routes a lot, so I can't give him higher than a 3.
And he's good in zone. He's good zone beater.
Hands, we gave him a 3. He does have some drops, but for the most part, he's reliable. Blocking, we both gave him a 3 for the reasons we just mentioned. Yak, we both gave him a 3. He gets some, not much. Versatility, 4. Football IQ, 3. And frame, we gave him a 3. So he graded out at a 3.16 for us. So, just barely above an average NFL tight end. And I know people are going to think that's sacrilege, but right now, from what I'm seeing on the tape, that's about where I see him landing.
And he got the same grade as Stowers for me. I don't necessarily feel like that represents how I feel about him, but he's well-rounded. He's it's not a lot of spots he grades terribly in, and even strength, I could have gone 3. I think I was just trying to find a way to show that I honestly didn't feel great about 3 as a blocker, and I didn't necessarily feel good about 2 at a strength. So I kind of just picked 1 to go down and 1 go up on.
Okay. So that's number 3. Who is our number 4? Oh yeah, this guy's fun. Okay, let me pull up his stuff here. I
So
bet you nobody knows who this guy is.
what is it? Is it my turn or your turn?
I think it's my turn, right? No, it's your turn. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
let
it's
me
your turn.
do
Go ahead.
because they had tie grade for us. Let me do the less fun one because I know you were higher on the more fun one than me.
Yeah. So I think this guy's a ton of fun. And it's a guy who's not getting a ton of buzz right now, but I think he should. And it is Terrance Carter Jr., tight end from Texas Tech. A little bit smaller, 6'2", 245 pounds, 3-star recruit. He's a redshirt junior. But Terrance Carter Jr. is your tight end who goes up and gets the football and catches everything thrown his way. He's athletic. He has good vision. He's another one of these big slot who can get the football. He's great in space. He drags guys around. He doesn't go down easy. Plays through contact. Has great contact balance. He is quite versatile. He can line up anywhere from inline slot to wide. He can be put in the backfield. He gets put in motion a lot. Good move blocker, really good move blocker. When he gets in space, he can really take guys out, create nice running lanes for people. And he likes to do that. He likes to find someone to hit down the field. He has good pop as a pass blocker, sets up defensive backs effectively before taking off on routes. He finds that soft spot in zone, gets the football, and then he runs with it. There are some deficiencies. He's an okay effort blocker, but he can be reckless in the open field. He doesn't look natural with his hands in the dirt. He's more of a guy who's going to always be standing in a wide receiver position. He can struggle a little bit to make his breaks sharp. He is kind of a stiff athlete. His hand placement and leverage and blocking aren't very good. And he doesn't generate a lot of push in the run game. Overall, though, like the last guy I reviewed, Carter Jr. is a versatile tight end. His natural skills project to a guy who should be a good pass catching tight end at the next level. He's athletic. He gets separation. He gets missed tackles. And I think his game has to develop as a blocker. To go through some of his stats real quickly before you chime in, Monty. I mean, listen to some of these things. He's got 27 receptions and 39 targets. So that's about just under 70%, 378 yards, 14 yards per reception, 5 touchdowns already. He has lined up in the slot 51.5% of the time. He generates about 8.2 yards of yak per reception. That's a lot. He's dropped the ball 3 times, so that is a 10% drop rate. But he's over 50% with the contested catch rate at 55%. And once again, 13 missed tackles for so far this year. That's really high. And for a guy who's, he's getting a lot of yak and getting 2.2 yards per route run, that's outstanding. So the data really loves him. What do you think about Terrance Carter Jr.?
Yeah, he's somebody who I really wanted to review for this because his data is phenomenal and it's really good in places that I like what he does after the catch. And Alex in the chat, I've talked to Alex a little about it. We've shared some clips back and forth, and I've seen him occasionally Saturdays. I've seen a guy who really impressed me at times, but what I saw when I dug a little bit more into him was a good, not great player. I thought he offered some of, those things like after the catch and whatnot. But, I almost thought of like he almost is like what people made Harold Fannin out to be when they didn't like him. When we were like, they're like, he's just stiff. He's not good enough to do at the NFL level. That's almost kind of feel about Terrance Carter. Like he's like, he does some good things at college level, but he seems a little bit too stiff for me to how I feel about how that will translate to the level. But there is, like you went through it. There is a lot to like about him. He really does play through contact, and the contested catch rate shows it, where he can really just go and make those plays, and he can have guys draped on him. He can kind of just be a check down guy for his quarterback. He does really natural hands, and his ability after the catch, I think, is one of his best traits is his vision. I think he shows really good vision when he gets in the open field. And he has a lot of strength. I actually did think he was a pretty good pass protector. Like that is something that showed up to me. But yeah, I just overall was not moved by him like I was hoping to be. I think he's going to be a day 3 guy, and I think he's more of a weapon, find a role for him than he is an all-around tight end.
Yeah, but we're talking about a day 3 guy. I mean, I agree with you. He's
Mhm.
probably going day 3, right? But
Yeah.
you're going to be hard pressed to find any receiving target, wide receiver or tight end, who has the potential to be more impactful than a guy like this. And I think that's why I like going over him, because I don't think he's a day 1 or day 2 guy. I don't think the NFL is going to value a stiff athlete like this, right?
Mhm.
I think they're going to say he's a stiff college athlete, let him slide, and you might pick him up in the middle of or the end of day 3. But again, he's one of those guys where I think his play on the football field is going to translate. I think a lot of the stuff he does for tight ends is exactly what you're looking for. And so, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this guy for a later in the draft pick.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a guy who can help and bring, you said, stuff that translates to the next level. But to me, we'll go over other grades, but like the next guy we'll talk about, like you might want to bet on traits more, like at end day 3. So, but let's go ahead and get into the grades of Terrance Carter first.
Speed and quickness, we both gave him a 3. He's average. Strength, you gave him a 2. I gave him a 3. I was more generous to him. Route running, you gave him a 2. I gave him a 3. Hands, we both gave him a 3. Blocking, we both gave him a 3. Yak, we both gave him a 4. Versatility, we both gave him a 4. Football IQ, we both gave him a 3. Frame, we both gave him a 3 overall. Grades out as a 3-1-1, similar to the last guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a solid player.
All right.
All right.
Why
So
don't you go over the last guy that we're reviewing today?
Yep. So let's get into the last guy. I'm going to go ahead and pull up his PFF profile here, and it is not a pretty one, but we'll get into it. All right. Last guy we're going to talk about, actually somebody we talked about last year, if you were watching last year for our tight episode, is Oscar Delp from Georgia, 6'5", 245 pounds. He was a 4-star recruit, one of the top guys in the tight ends in the nation when he came out. Actually, a former high school lacrosse player. And I think you kind of see some of that athleticism translate. But let's get into it. I thought he was a pretty good blocker. I thought he lined up and squared up defenders well when he was engaging them, and really put them in a good spot to win with leverage. I thought he was a willing blocker, solid inline pass blocker, capable of taking on defensive ends. I thought, he showed some good football IQ in his chip and releases where, he would get it, keep his eyes downfield and, find a spot where he could be open and find a hole in coverage, and knew when to get off of his block. I thought he showed some exceptional movement skills. I thought he showed a ton of potential to be a great route runner. I don't think he is a great route runner today, but I saw a guy who was very fluid in and out of his breaks. I thought I saw a guy. This guy is not one like some others we've talked about that rounds out his routes. I thought this guy was very crisp in his routes, and a guy who showed very loose, oily hips like some of the other guys that we talked about, like a Trigg, but he doesn't have he's not a refined route runner or receiver. I thought he was versatile. He did H back, he was in line, a little slot, a little outside, more of an H back in line guy, but they did mess around with him a little bit out there. Natural hands catcher. I thought he was a pretty reliable receiver. My negatives. He was not a focal point ever in that Georgia offense. He's a guy who's a part of it. He's a valuable piece there, but he is not ever been like a guy where you can watch him and be like, wow, this guy's taking over a game. He can struggle in space blocking. Technique can be inconsistent in open field. And he's a guy who doesn't offer much after catch. He is, limited yak, which, I do think it's something he can do, but he hasn't, shown it a lot. Again, just it's a lack of what we've seen. Can this guy be somebody that you bet on the next level? I think he could be. I think he's a guy that has good size. I think he has good athleticism, and he's come from a winning program and is going to be able, at least be able to help you out as a solid blocker in the NFL. He's somebody who I'd feel good betting on, and at the very least, really more likely is going to be kind of what I'm looking for in a tight end too, and just a reliable, athletic guy who can help in the blocking game, but he might be able to be more.
Yeah. I mean, I like Oscar Delp. The problem with Oscar Delp, as you alluded to, is they don't use him much.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, he's kind of an afterthought in that offense, and so you don't get to see him get showcased. And I think there's more juice there than you're seeing if you just stare at the stat line. You're not seeing it, but as you mentioned, he's a pretty damn good athlete. He runs good routes. He gets open. There's a lot of plays where you watch him and he's just open on tape, like he's flying down the sideline or he's running a wheel route or he's doing something and he's open. So I like his upside. We just haven't seen it produce yet, and I think that's going to be the issue that drags him down when it comes to draft stock. But you know what? If you want to bet on traits, he's a strong kid and a great athlete. And he's not getting a lot of production because of whatever's going on in that offense. So if you're saying I want a bargain basement high value pick, this might be your guy if he gets to day 3.
Yeah, I mean, this could, kind of the similar to the bet we made last year with Dino Dong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let's get into the scores. So, speed. You gave him a 4. I gave him a 4. Strength. You gave him a 3. I gave him a 3. We have the same scores, don't we? The route running, 3s. Hands, 3s. Blocking, 3s. Yak, we both gave him a 2. Versatility, we both gave him a 3. Football IQ, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 3. I probably could have gone to 4 here. I was probably being harsh. And then frame, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 3. But overall, he grades out at a 3.11. And I think that's kind of how I would grade him for the purpose of the draft, with the only exception and caveat being that I think there's a lot more juice there to squeeze if you put him in the right system.
I agree. I think tight end, more than any position, is a position that you bet on traits, and the league knows that. And it's one where these college teams don't do a good job of putting these guys on display, which is it's funny because they did a great job with Brock Bowers. So maybe that's something to keep in mind. But overall, you haven't seen these college offenses doing a good job of utilizing these guys. And sometimes you just gotta bet on traits and see what they can do in the NFL.
That's the bet, right? Day 3 rolls around. You're sitting there in the 5th round. You already took a receiver. You took some other stuff, and you're like, man, what's out there? Maybe Oscar Delp is your best play at that point of the draft, 5th or 6th round, something like that. That would be amazing if he could last that long.
Yeah, and could he be at worst like maybe like a Daniel Bellinger type and just be a solid like tight end 2 for you?
He could be, although I think he has a little bit more in terms of movement skills.
Yeah,
But
I mean, Daniel Bellinger tested well, but I agree on tape, it's more athletic.
yep. All right. So that's the 5 we decided to review. It's an interesting group. Obviously, we didn't go over everybody. We didn't even go over some guys who are going to be viewed as like the top of day 2 type players, but 5 interesting players to review. And some of these guys, I'm telling you, are going to be there when the Giants are thinking tight end. Almost certainly, some of these guys are going to be there, and they're worth knowing. Before we close it out, let's look at the college football games, Monty. Have you pulled up the page?
I have not.
All right. Well, there's
so
the 1 o'clock, the 12 o'clock games. Indiana at Penn State was supposed to be a great rivalry matchup. I don't think it's going to be a great game now, but it's on. BYU number 7 against number 8 Texas Tech. That's going to be a fun one. 2 really strong programs right now. We just went over the Texas Tech kid. If you guys want to see him play, tune into that game. Colorado at West Virginia. If you're Monty, that's what you're going to be watching.
Hey, we won. We finally didn't embarrass ourselves. We beat Houston. We beat a ranked team. I think it was the first time we beat a ranked team in like 3 years. So that's nice.
Texas A&M at Missouri at 3:30 should be entertaining.
Hey,
That
get to
Missouri
watch
team's been kind
one
of
of the guys
pesky.
reviewed.
Yeah, absolutely. Oregon at Iowa is always a good game. And I'm just kind of scrolling through this to see what are we missing. And I know so LSU is at Alabama. Unranked LSU is at Alabama. This was supposed to be a battle for like the SEC title.
Mm-hmm.
Not so. And I think there was one more. Maybe not. Maybe that's it. That's all I got. You got anything?
No, I mean UCLA, Nebraska should be a decent game. Yeah, no, I think you touched on most of them though.
All right. Well, thank you guys for those of you who stayed for this tight end episode and discussing Giant stuff at the top of the hour. Remember to like us and subscribe on your YouTube page. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers so the algorithm can take us places. Once again, you can reach me at Queens_guy. You can reach Monty at MONTECRI5TO. You can reach at He's a Giant Pod on Twitter. Next week, we're going to keep the offensive side of the ball reviews going. We'll get back. Actually, no, next week I might not be able to do next week's episode. If I can't, we'll let you guys know. But we are going to stay on the offensive side next time we go out there. Any closing thoughts, Monty?
No, man. Fire Joe Schoen. That is my closing thought.
He's going to keep saying it till it happens.
Yeah.
Fire Joe Schoen. All right, guys. We appreciate you guys being here. We will see you next time. Go Giants.
Go Giants.